Hey, what's up guys? Duce right here. Today, I'm going to do a little something special for you. By the title, you're wondering, how the heck is this possible? Well, I'm going to explain. We're going to actually mix Dolby Atmos, or I'm going to demonstrate how to set it up, rather. I'm not going to do full mix here, but we're going to demonstrate how to set up Dolby Atmos to mix in any DAW, specifically Studio One. Studio One doesn't support Dolby Atmos, nor natively or externally, the way the renderer worked previously through other means. We're going to do it inside Studio One. These same principles will apply to pretty much any other DAW. You can do this in FL Studio. You can do this in Ableton, basically any DAW out there. So there's basically some new plugins that allow us to pull this off. So real quick, we'll go through what Dolby Atmos, I guess, is, and my current setup. I have a studio tour on this channel. You can go check out. I kind of show around my studio as well as the Dolby Atmos setup and the number of speakers. I'm currently running a 7.1.4 system, so 7 speakers around at ear level. The second number being the subwoofer. Channels, you can have multiple subs on this and still have one as far as your channel of LFE goes. LFE stands for low frequency effect in Atmos. And then 4, the last number, is the ceiling speakers, speakers above me. There's other configurations. There's a 916 and other random ones. I'm running a 714, which is pretty standard for most Atmos setups, at least currently. At some point, I may upgrade to a 916 because it'd just be cool. But and what I'm going to show you will work with a 916, will work with 714, and a few other speaker configurations. So you're like, well, how is this possible? Well, I'm going to explain. So right now, you're probably looking at my screen going, whoa, what's all this stuff going on? So there's a bunch of tracks here. Kind of pull it back out here, and a lot of this is just automation lanes. I can hide this stuff, and then so this is just the basic mix. This is a cover song. My buddy Dwayne recorded this. Super dope singer. He's going to be releasing some stuff. He's in a couple of bands and does a bunch of different things. He was in a hip hop group with me back in the day. So anyway. Point is, this is his song. I'll probably play a few clips from it, but what I want to demonstrate is there's two plugins from a manufacturer called Fielder Audio. So or Fielder, Fiedler Audio, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on how to pronounce that, but I'm pretty sure that's how you do it. Fiedler. Anyway, so I have multiple screens here, so there's just a bunch of stuff going on. Here, I'll hide stuff. There's a lot going on there. And so the Dolby Atmos Composer, or the render engine, is the first plugin. I'll pull this down here. Give me a sec. So as you can see, this is the Atmos render engine from them. Again, Fielder. It's not Fielder, it's Fiedler. It's kind of weird pronunciation. I'm assuming that's how you say it. Anyway, so this is basically what they call the Dolby Atmos Composer, but basically it's the Dolby Atmos renderer from them. And you can have beds and objects and all that stuff. As you can see by this, I have a 10 speaker bed here, and then I have some pairs of objects. Nothing too crazy. We didn't go crazy on this. One, there's not a ton of tracks, but and then over here, real quick, it shows the speaker configuration. I'll pull up. These are the options that it gives you for speaker configuration. So you can see it does offer a 7.1, which would be like the old surround sound, and 5.1, the other version. 5.1 was the original surround sound. So it offers those. You can mix in those. You can mix in stereo. I don't know why you would in this plugin, but I guess you could switch it to hear it in other monitoring systems. So, and one thing to note about this is there's no configuration, at least not yet, for which channels of your interface apply to which speakers. I've found through a little bit of experience and testing this on 3 different softwares now with, DaVinci Resolve was the first one. They offer Dolby Atmos. That's built into them. And that actually allows specific speaker configuration, so you can get custom with it. So if you don't want to use the same order that that has become kind of standard, or at least what seems to be standard, you can do that in that program. I've also done this done some mixing in Cubase, which seems to follow the standard. I don't remember seeing any configuration for which channel or output of your interface is which speaker. I kind of already had it set up like it more or less should be. And then this obviously uses that as well. So there is an order. If you're wondering, for a 714 system, you have 12 channels. So in order, it would be left, right, center, LFE, which is your subwoofer, then left side, right side, left rear surround, right rear surround, then a ceiling front left, ceiling front right, ceiling back left, and ceiling back right, or height, or whatever you want to call it. There are different names for it. So that is the particular order in which you should have your speakers plugged into your interface. So obviously you need an interface with at least 12, but I would say you probably need more than that, because this also will spit out a binaural mix as well, which you really want. So I have 1 through 12 for the speakers on my outputs off the console here, which is also my interface. And then channels 13 and 14 outputs are going out into headphones, basically. I can either plug them in directly to my console here or to my monitor controller. Either way, it goes the same thing. And that, so at least 14. You could potentially have there's other complicated ways to set it up, but we won't get into that. That's the basics. So I would say at least 14, because you do want to check your mix as you're mixing in binaural mode to make sure, and when you're setting up settings for your distance and stuff for things that only apply in binaural. And actually I'll pull that up here. So right here on the screen, you can see these are the channels that I have. All the inputs are basically all the channels here, and and next to it, so if these orange channels, those are bed channels, and those also give you binaural distances. So in binaural mode, you can set it to off, near, mid, or far, and you can just kind of play with that, listen in the headphones, and start moving those things around. I think, just play around with it. It becomes much more critical when you're running objects, I think, personally, but each mix is going to be different. Anyway, so mid, far, as you can see, I have a few different settings here for like far, near, mid in this listing for that. Back to the monitoring section real quick. Another thing to note is you do need to set your buffer size to 512, and it has to be at 48 kilohertz or 48 sample rate, or 96. Both the Dolby Media, both Dolby's encoder or render engine, Dolby Atmos' render engine supports both 48 and 96, and actually this does as well. I don't believe Cubase, I can't remember if Cubase or if DaVinci Resolve only supports 48. I can't remember which one, but this supports both. I do almost all my projects at 48 anyway, so that's not a problem. I just have to make sure that the buffer size is set to 512 right here. I don't know why it gives you these other options, because those don't work. Though another note, I believe when you're running 96, I think you have to set the buffer rate to 1024, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so another real quick note, Atmos is generally quieter. There's a very hard limit on how loud an Atmos mix can be. Otherwise, it will get declined when you upload it to streaming services. So it has to be under lower than -18 LUFS integrated. So as your whole average track loudness, it can't be any louder than -18 LUFS. It's a standard, and there's good reason for it, actually. When you're crashing down to, say, binaural or other speaker configurations with less speakers, like whether it's 2 speakers or whatever, you need to fold down all the entire room into whatever speaker. So you need that headroom to do that, so it just doesn't completely blow that speaker up or that pair of headphones up completely. So that's why that is there. It's also a good thing. It allows us to just be more dynamic in our mixes with the loudness wars of people making things louder and louder and just extreme loud. Some of these songs, some of these hip hop songs, some of these rock songs just have zero dynamic range. They're just loud all the time. And there's just not, it just takes life out of a mix. So Atmos is kind of forcing people to bring some life back in the mix, which I think is a good thing. Also, when you render stuff out, you do get the binaural output. You can actually render out a stereo from your Atmos mix. I think, though, probably not the best. I at least for the foreseeable future, will also be doing a stereo mix. I'll do that first and then export the stems. So that's a quick overview of this plugin and what it offers as far as the rendering. Let's close that and let's open up to one of our tracks here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to crash down. I have a screen above, so I'll bring down this mixer here so you can see what I'm looking at here. So along this mixer here, we notice that, yes, okay. I was trying to figure out which color I was looking at for a second there. All right, so if you notice, I have like the standard channels here, but if you notice that along all these green channels, I have the fader all the way down, and there's a reason for that, and it's on the same on my console here. So they mirror each other. It's in DAW mode right now. If I switch out of that, I can see my level gains and everything else. Basically, when I have this set up, it acts as the outputs and monitoring control for me as well. But anyway, so all the green channels you see here, those are my Atmos sends or my panners. Okay, so with pull this up a little bit more. So with regular stereo mixing or in Studio One, it obviously has panners. You have your left, right across everything here. You have center, and you can pan things, whatever, see, obviously. But those panners are pretty useless when it comes to Atmos Mix, obviously, because those panners are just basically stereo panners, or binaural panners. There's 3 modes in there, but they don't have the 3-dimensional panning. So the other plugin that comes with this package from this company is their panner. Bring it over here. So this is a 3-dimensional panner right here, and you can you want to label these things so you keep track of it when you pull up the pin that and open this up as well, so I can demonstrate this. I'll pin that there. So as you can see, like I have this 3-dimensional panner here. It's named Guitar Solo AM for Atmos. I was kind of lazy with all the naming, but I got to the point where at least I know what I'm doing with it. So as you can see on here, this is that panner. I can also open it from this button here as well. I can disconnect the panner from the composer. If you needed to, you can mute it, solo them. You can change them to objects or to beds. These are beds here, 712. That's a standard bed in pretty much all Atmos mixing, 10 channels. You're basically taking the height channels and just making it 2 left and right on a bed. But as far as the playback goes, you're still getting that immersiveness, because even if you pan something forward to the right, the end render engine, when it plays it back for the consumer, will play it using additional speakers to create that illusion of the front speakers. So the more speakers, it just removes phantom centers from, there's basically a phantom center in between every set of speakers in here. So, whether it's right in the center, there's a phantom center there, right? And so if you place an object directly between those 2 speakers, it's going to play between those, right? Or if you scale that object up, because all these sounds are now 3-dimensional objects. We're not mixing in channels anymore, at least speaker channels. We're mixing with three-dimensional objects in a 3-dimensional environment. So if you scale that up, if you take that object and you make it larger in scale, it'll start bleeding into other speakers, and that's where you get this immersion. Kind of just running through all this stuff because there's a lot of information to take in here, and you may have to go back and watch this a few times, but trying to cover a lot of the basics so you can understand that, so you can actually get in here and play with this in Studio One or any DAW of your choice. So past that, let's go back to the panner here. We have different controls. Like this is a stereo object, a left and right. If it was a mono object, you just have 1 channel up here. And then it's listed as an object here, not a composite. If it was a composite, if we change that, this highlights up and now it becomes part of the bed. That's part of your bed system. So go back to object. You can also use this to send stuff to the LFE. You can only send 1 channel to LFE. So sometimes what you can do is, like, obviously in Atmos, all your speakers are supposed to be full range, but the LFE is supposed to be for extra bass, right? It's not an extension of your speakers. It's its own channel. So you need to send things to it with this LFE channel here, right? So I can show you if I go to the bass. I believe this has it. Yeah, okay. So on this bass here, I have a guitar bass in this track. And what I did is I sent the right side of that bass to the LFE with this right here. And then the left side I positioned just kind of up towards the listener. So the bass guitar is like right here, but then you also feel it through the subwoofer, through the LFE as well. So you get like a proximity effect closer to the listener, and then you also get that pounding sub to create the effect that I wanted in this. There's a bunch of controls in here for different things. I'm going to close this one. A bunch of controls in here for different things. You have distance here. You have spread, obviously volume. And we're going to get into this. Why this, I'm going to give you guys a big trick, at least functionality-wise, when it comes to Atmos and mixing. Here in a second. I'm going to explain that in a second. These are just like, so you have an elevation thing here where you can, I have to highlight these. There we go. So if you don't have the object highlighted, you could select one object at a time, or you can highlight both if you want to manipulate both at the same time like this. And then you have an elevation, which is obviously height information. And then we have distance. So this you can use to automate, like going through things and whatnot. So that's useful. And then this azimuth is like a rotational thing. So it's an easy way to just like rotate things forever around you. Right? So there's that. Then spread, which is how big those objects become. As you can see, it gets bigger when we, so it's going to cover more speakers, right? Which can be useful. All these parameters, again, you can automate. And I'll show that in a second. And then the volume. This is the volume coming out of the panner, going to the renderer or composer. And So now this is where we're going to get into why. I'm a little trick here. So the way it works, when the audio goes into the panner, so it's a plug-in. It's sitting in your inserts or your effect bin or whatever the DAW calls it. They're called inserts in Studio One. So once it hits that panner, like right here, so once the audio comes in and hits that panner, it goes directly to the render engine, which, okay, well, that's cool. But what if I have sends? What if I have like effect sends here, or if I want to automate the fader? This comes into why I have these set up this way. Normally, people would just take the panner and just stick it on the channel that they want, and you can do that. But now you're just stuck with a volume that's in this little freaking knob here, which isn't that great. It's kind of annoying to try to use that to quote unquote mix your song. If you had to go into every single one to mix your song, talk about a pain in the butt. So obviously it's not this plugin's fault, because they're only limited. They don't have access to each DAW. You know what I mean? So what I did to solve this, because I have a lot of automations I'm using on the faders. I have automations on sends, and I could have like all kind. I can still use my regular stereo panners here before it hits the Atmos panner. You can still do that, and you can send things to buses and everything else. So what I basically did is if you look at these channels here, so this symbol here is like, it just shows an audio track. Now, which is fine. And then this symbol means it's a bus channel. So you can see little 3 prongs leading into 1 prong. So a bus is basically sending a bunch of stuff to one thing, right? Or to one bus channel where you can do effects or, volume rides on a whole group of things, right? That's one way to do it. There's obviously more than them. You can use VCAs for that and a bunch of other things, right? But just for simplicity's sake, and also in Studio One, you can make buses mono too, just FYI. And that can be useful when you're doing stuff with basses and LFE and stuff, where you don't want, sometimes you want your bass signal to be mono, because it sounds weird sometimes depending on stereo. So especially if you're going to a subwoofer. Now, what I did is I have this channel here, and if you notice, I have the output of this channel, this guitar channel solo, going to a bus. It's called guitar AM. Yep, that's this right here. So I have the bus right next to it to make it nice and easy, and I colored all the Atmos buses. So I have other buses like down here that are gray. Those are standard buses that I have like effects on and stuff. And then I have Atmos buses, basically. And this is so I can still do my automations, still do my panning, still do any kind of sends, automations with those, effects processing beforehand, etc. And then I send, I can send individual sound, or I can send like for groups of vocals. I'll either I think I have, let me see if I can find it. I have stuff going into this Ultra Verb bus here. So it's just a reverb plugin that I have stuff going into. And then I took that bus and sent it to another bus, basically, which you can do. Excuse me. So that basically allows a lot of powerful things to happen. And since there is, since anything past the Atmos Panner doesn't do anything, it just skips it. So obviously I don't have any sends on these Atmos quote unquote buses, even though that, they're just, I'm basically creating a bus for Atmos panning is what it is. And I'm just calling them Atmos buses. It's not quite right when you're working with a system that, like a DAW that already works with Atmos. Because obviously their software is developed and they have 3-dimensional panners on each of the channels and stuff, so it all functions the way it should. We're kind of figuring out a way around this at the moment. So I just take the volume of those quote-unquote Atmos buses and just bring them all down so I don't get confused as to what channel, when I'm looking at my console or looking at the screen, I know that everything that's all the way down is not being used, as well as with color code them. So I'm just trying to make things as clear as possible at a quick glance, so I'm not getting confused, especially when you have lots of channels going on and things happening. So that is basically what is happening with that. Let me, I guess I'll play a little bit of this here. Hopefully I don't get, this is a cover song, so hopefully YouTube doesn't kill me on it, but here we go.
So don't call me baby. I don't mean it. Don't tell me you need me if you don't believe it.
So obviously, you know, you're not hearing the Atmos mix over YouTube, but you can see things going on. You can see all the channels, the speakers here, and the binaural output. It's not actually clipping on this because I've tested it. I'm still hitting below. I'm not hearing any distortion. The levels are not. So I think there's a bug maybe in this binaural output because it's not actually clipping. So I think maybe. Another quick thing to note is since I don't have a physical actual monitor controller that actually is an Atmos enabled monitor controller, we're using software to do that, so we can turn the volume of the monitoring up and down right here with this speaker knob here, and it doesn't affect the actual volume of the thing. That's just for monitoring purposes. And you can see right down here, it shows you like short term, like it shows you how loud stuff is, and you can monitor its loudness measurements. You have these options here. Let's see, go to options here. Oh, okay, here's another thing. Basically, for music, and I'm still playing with this, but from my understanding, you want to set this to the default for here in the down mix from 5.1 to 2.0. The down mix from 7, 1.4, I believe, is what that is. It's not letting me widen it out, but to direct render. There's some issues with, I know people was having some issues with submitting the stuff if it's not set up correctly. So pretty sure you should have this at direct render. Obviously this is a new plugin, I mean, these are all new technologies, so we're all like figuring stuff out as we go. But from my understanding, that's what you want. Now these are trim values. These are more, I've been told to take it off automatic because in the automatic settings, it's more mimicking what you'd want out of like trim for height speakers and surround and whatnot for film. For music, we don't want the trim too much. Though I do have, let's see, I have a slight trim on these just because I felt like it ended a little bit better result, but you could, I think you're supposed to have these set to 0. And then you have to go through each one of these and change them to, I think I did this because of the stereo output. I just wanted to cut down just because I was hearing some weird things in the binaural, and just trimming those back a tiny bit seemed to fix the problem. But probably should be at 0, to be honest. So, but for music, this is what I've been told by people that have been doing this for a while, that the trims probably should be set to 0 for music. Again, sample rate is here as well. And then down here you have options for, exporting the ADM BWF file, which is your Atmos master file. And then I just put this master gain just down a touch, a little bit, to just give me a little more headroom in case, just in case. You don't have to do that though. But remember, need to be under negative 18 LUFS. And then, so these are export renders for output speakers and headphones. So you have options for like, I believe. So what I'm doing is I'm usually have it on the multi-channel wave file. So I'll get a binaural of this. And I don't need, oh yeah, I need this too. Though actually I believe you don't need this on for the ADM file. This is like a different version of that. I don't know what it'd be useful for. I'm sure there's a use. And it also gives you an option for spitting out mono files for each of the channels. So you get 12 mono files as well. If you wanted to do that. I'm not sure the use case for that specifically, but it's there. Also, after you've exported your ADM with this, and there's two ways to do it. One, you do it in real time. So you set up this stuff and you you hit this export button here, and then you just play it, and it'll play everything and it'll render it essentially in more or less real time. Or you can use, supposedly, I haven't tested it yet, but supposedly you can use your internal renderer and it'll do it'll do the same thing as long as you have this set up, right? You want to hit export, save the file, and then go to your render thing that you would normally render out MP3 or WAV or whatever. Render out that. You don't need that file. You can delete the one that comes out of your standard renderer in your DAW, and then it'll also give you these files, so you'll have them. Let's see. I think I covered all that. Oh, you want to make sure you set your input and output set in point, so the start of the thing. I think you're supposed to leave a certain amount of time beforehand. I think most people are leaving a bar is enough. Double check that. I am not 100% sure. So, but the information's out there, so just Google how much time you need before the Atmos. And I think it also needs to match your stereo, from what I understand. So if you're starting to mix Atmos stuff, obviously your client or you is going to be uploading your MP3 or WAV, your stereo mix, as well as your Atmos mix with it, and then the stores will place them how they may. But I do know 99% sure that the length of both of them, your stereo mix and your Atmos mix, need to be exactly the same, down to the sample. So just make sure you do that. Set your in point, set your out point for this renderer, and do the same thing in your DAW with start and end in Dolby or in Studio One. You have a start flag and an end flag, or markers rather, and just make sure they match what the Atmos renderer is doing, and you should be good on that as well. So yeah, that's basically like the nuts and bolts of this. This will allow you to actually mix in Atmos. Another quick note is room treatment and timing and EQ and all that, like making sure your speakers are tuned and your room has treatment. Basically, you want to have as good a sounding room as possible to mix Atmos in, because remember, you're not mixing in stereo anymore, meaning two speakers. When you have 12 speakers throwing sound around and you don't have room treatment, you're gonna have a lot of problems with phase and things slapping all over the place. You can get used to that, with just stereo set of speakers, especially if you're not mixing high volume. You can deal with how bad the room sounds, but in Atmos, it's just not really possible. At least not if you actually want to make something that actually works and sounds good. So you need to tune your speakers. I suggest there's different software out there. Sonar makes something. They have a stereo version, and then you can also upgrade to their app. They have an Atmos version as well. I actually didn't upgrade the Atmos, but I did. It lets you run the test basically and gives you the information. So then I just took all that information and I put it into the hardware on the console. So I have EQ adjustments for every single output going out. I have it saved as a profile in here. You can do that with, whether it's like external EQs or software based, or use SonarWorks or Trinov or any number of things. And you also need to time delay all your speakers. So all the speakers should reach you at the same time. So whatever's the furthest speaker away from you is, that one won't have any time delay, but everything else has to have some sort of time delay. SonarWorks will also give you that information of the timing differences. And you can set up SonarWorks to run Atmos through it. I haven't tested it. I have a lot of different interfaces on this computer, and it just doesn't. Maybe they have a plug-in for Atmos. I don't know. I haven't tested it. I don't know. But I know you can use SonarWorks as like just your quote-unquote audio output or interface, essentially. Not interface, but like basically it hijacks the signal before it goes to your interface and then does correction. Like you can just use it as part of like a background software. I use it, like if you look right here, I'll pull it up. So this is the sound reference. This is what my room looks like after acoustic treatment. And this is just, this is actually the stereo version of this. I do have an Atmos calibration as well, but I'm not sure where it is, but I already saved all that information and then put it in here. So this stuff is great for fixing your problems in your room. Obviously, you still want to put room treatment in because you don't want to over crank your speakers when it comes to compensation. About 6 dB of gain is about as much as you want to do in any frequency, especially if you're actually playing your speakers pretty loud. If you're playing them super quiet, you can get away with more, but it's just good not to overextend certain frequencies when you're doing it this way, because you can damage your speakers. So keep that in mind. That's another reason why room treatment is important, because if you treat the room, balance the room right, there will be less extreme dips, highs and lows, and you won't have to artificially compensate EQ-wise in certain frequencies too much. So just a little tip for you there. Anyway, so I think it covers basically what I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'll do my best to answer. I've only been doing this for a few months now in Atmos, but I've been mixing music for over like almost 2.5 decades now. So I have a lot of experience. So definitely the first few days, like 3 or 4 days of wrapping my head around Atmos definitely took a little bit, just to kind of like figure it out. But once you kind of get it set up, it's not too bad. And this makes it very user-friendly. You can, like I said, you can mix Atmos in pretty much any DAW, as far as I know. If it takes plugins, you can kind of see how it works. Yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Do me a favor, hit that like, hit that subscribe. I meant to say that earlier in the video, but I didn't. So it is what it is. I do some tutorial content, tips and tricks. I also post beats here, as well as my own music gets put up here when I upload it onto DistroKid, and that spits out. Speaking of that, if you need a place to distribute your music to all the major platforms out there, DistroKid is a great option. I have a link down below for referral. I'll save you some money in your first year. It's like, I think it's like $30 a year or something around that range. It's pretty cheap, and it's going to save you some money on that, and it'll help out support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Go ahead and like I said, share this video with anybody you think that could use this information. That'd be super helpful. Thank you. Have a great day. Peace.